actually think I prefer the design of this car over the new one.
Now, mechanically, these things actually have a terrible reputation for reliability, but the truth is, well, you might be surprised.
It feels like the engine and the transmission and the steering and the suspension and the brakes they're all speaking like a different dialect of the same language. Okay, how's this for tempting? You could potentially buy a 2 to 3 year old car for just over $10,000. Plus, it's still going to have years of new car warranty left on it. That does seem like incredible value for money. Well, look, I'm afraid it's not as simple as that, because for a car to be so cheap in such a competitive market, many compromises need to be made. And unfortunately, a lot of these cost-cutting measures can lead to a higher likelihood of things going wrong. For example, when it comes to the exterior, plenty of owners have reported that the paint is incredibly thin and susceptible to scratching, even just when you're drying it after giving it a wash, which this car hasn't had in quite some time. Potentially even worse is that specifically 2019 white models, they started to do their best impression of a Toyota from the early 2010s and peel off their paint, especially from the leading edge of the roof. Now, this shouldn't be actually all that bad news, because most owners found MG repaired this under warranty, although some other owners found that MG knocked back the warranty claim because their preferred repairer just quoted too much to repair the roof. Next up, when you read through the owners groups and forums, you'll find almost endless stories of owners complaining that the standard halogen headlights just do a terrible job at lighting the road ahead, to the point that many owners have had to go and fit aftermarket light bars just to see where they're going at night. Okay, this next one seems to be really inconsistent, but some owners out there are reporting rust spots all over the car, sometimes underneath, sometimes within actual panels, even sometimes on the little latch hook thing for the bonnet. However, other owners, even owners that live right next to the coast, haven't reported any rust issues whatsoever. Okay, next up, a few owners have reported that the taillights can fill with water after you wash the car, or if there's been any really heavy rain. Now, the good news here is that most owners have had these replaced under warranty, or at least that's the intention of the MG dealership, as soon as they can actually get any stock of spare parts. Actually, this is one of the issues you might need to be concerned about. Look, it's great that MG offer a 7-year warranty with these, but quite a few owners have had an issue where MG themselves can't source certain spare parts. So those warranty claims can sometimes take weeks or even months to remedy because there's just not stock of spares. Okay, next up, quite a few owners have reported premature wear from the brakes and the tires. Firstly, with the brakes, apparently not only can they wear prematurely, but they can apparently squeak and squeal. Also, it seems that MG are charging a bit of a premium for new pads and rotors. The other issue with the brakes is that there aren't many alternatives from the aftermarket scene, which means you're limited for options for better performing brakes that are also going to save you money. And then when it comes to the tires, the owners that have done this have reported amazing results. If you upgrade the tires to a more premium tire and get a full alignment done, apparently you can pretty much transform the car. Now, a fun fact for you, the MG3 for a period of time was the cheapest new car available in Australia. And one of the ways that MG managed that was by just having an incredibly simple model lineup. Locally, MG have delivered 2 iterations of technically the 2nd generation MG3, both featuring near identical mechanical packages with a couple of different states of tune across primarily 2 trim specs, with a couple of special additions thrown in to keep things interesting. Now look, we will be delving into all of the interior and mechanical issues in a sec and seeing what these are like to drive and live with, but if you do need all of the common problems listed out so it's really easy to refer to, go to ReDriven.com and check out the free MG3 cheat sheet. It's basically the ultimate MG3 buyer's guide. Now let's talk pricing for a second, because as I alluded to at the start of the video, you can pick up 2021 and even 2022 models of these for under $11,000. Okay, granted that will probably be a base model core with loads of kilometers on it, but even then you can get lower kilometer newer models for under 12,000 bucks. And even at the top end of the spectrum, pricing currently tops out at around about $20,000 for a top spec Excite in basically new condition from 2023. But the problem with this pricing is that it suggests that these could potentially lose maybe 40% of their value in just 6 years. Those are figures that match fancy brands like Mercedes-Benz and Range Rover. Actually, just on the whole brand name thing, chances are you already know this, but through our research, it surprised us at how many people don't actually know this. If you're thinking about buying an MG because you're thinking it's a classic English brand, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid MG is no longer English. MG is owned by SAIC Motor, and they're currently China's largest automotive manufacturer. Also, all MG3s in Australia were built in China. So English, yeah, not anymore. Now, an all new MG3 landed on our shores a few months ago with far more contemporary designs than this car. But you know what? I actually think I prefer the design of this car over the new one. Look, obviously it isn't some amazing automotive design project at all, but for these cars to come in at the price that they did, MG really had to watch every dollar spent, and that also goes into the overall design of the car. But I think it looks a little bit more expensive than what the price suggests. I think it's a pretty decent looking thing, especially in the higher spec Excite model. Yeah, good looking thing. And you know what? For me, the decent design language does continue inside until you touch anything or look at anything too closely, but we'll get to that in a second. Firstly, what goes wrong with these interiors? Well, a bit like the rust issue on the outside, some owners have experienced rust forming on some of the interior panels up underneath the dashboard. Again, this does seem to be really inconsistent between cars, but if you are in the market for one of these, get on the floor and look up underneath the dash, or maybe you get your phone camera out with a torch and just see if there's any rust forming. Obviously, if there is rust forming, yeah, don't buy that car. Then there are, let's say, ergonomic complaints. There's no driver's footrest. Depending on how your body is shaped and the height you like to sit at, with the sun visor down, it can block out a lot of the rear view mirror. And a lot of owners have complained that there's no lumbar support or not enough lumbar support for the seats, and the seats are really uncomfortable. Now, I must be one of the lucky few here because I actually think the seats are really, really comfortable. There's a good amount of support, good amount of squidge, so it's pretty comfy on a long trip. I actually compliment the seats. I'm sorry if you disagree with that. However, I do wish I could sit lower. That's just a me thing. I like to sit low and all hunkered down. It does feel like you're driving a little SUV sometimes because you sit up so high compared to the steering wheel, which is only adjustable for height. You can't, there's the adjuster. Hang on. Doesn't go in or out at all. That's a bit annoying. Then there are a few complaints about the infotainment system, especially when you're using Apple CarPlay. Apparently you can do really weird stuff, like it can just pause your music, especially if you're listening to Spotify. Sometimes the operation can be slow, sometimes the screen can just go completely blue, or sometimes when you restart the car, the volume is just incredibly loud. And also, if you're an Android user, sorry, but Android Auto is not supported with these, you're gonna be stuck with Bluetooth. Although there are solutions to this like wireless USB adapters, just jump on the owners groups and the forums, or check out Automotive Superstore because there's loads of great advice there and heaps of other infotainment options to go for. Actually, just back to those owners groups and forums, I've got to say a massive thank you to all of the members of those forums and owners groups that helped us research this video, because without your input and advice, we couldn't make these videos. But back to common complaints with the interior, a lot of owners have complained that the glove box isn't large enough and there's a lack of cup holders. Actually, just on the practicality, why didn't MG take some inspiration from the Honda Jazz? Because a Jazz feels maybe even a little bit smaller than the interior of this car, but it has way more practicality. I mean, in here, yeah, you've got your really small glove box. The door bins aren't real big either. You do have a spot for your phone here, but the way it's designed and angled, it's just gonna collect crap and dirt and life's filth, as will this storage bin, as will the tiny cup holder. But again, it's not small enough to hold the small pretentious coffee really well, like a Piccolo. It's just going to roll around everywhere, but then it's not big enough for a bottle of water. That's going to collect crap. That's going to collect more crap. This is going to collect more crap. And also there's another little storage cubby bin here that I don't think anyone uses in any car ever. Also, another annoyance with the phone situation, if you've got it plugged in, there's not enough space for both the phone and the cable to stick out, so it's going to sit all askew. Just poor design. But look, back to the overall vibe of the interior. As you'd expect at a car at this price point, there are loads of hard plastics, but really, it doesn't feel any worse than some other cars asking twice this price. But in saying that, go and look at the interior of, say, a Mazda 2. It also uses loads of hard plastics, but then Mazda uses textures that seem to be more premium than what they actually are. Would have been nice if MG had done the same. Also, if you're the sort of person that's triggered by a discrepancy when it comes to having an eye for detail, maybe don't look too closely in here, because there are some things that, yeah, they really annoy me as well. For example, this tartan pattern here, surely it's not meant to just kind of fall off an edge like that. Isn't that supposed to be completely horizontal? And also on the seats, look at this, the tartan, it doesn't actually line up properly. That stuff just infuriates me. But again, remember, this is a car built to an incredibly tight budget. None of us are going to criticize a very cheap TV for not matching the likes of a top-of-the-range Samsung or LG. So maybe a few of us are a bit too fast to criticize a sub $20,000 car for not matching cars asking twice as much. But despite all that, we also have to talk about levels of wear and tear, because from what we've gathered, it's not fantastic in these. Even in this particular car, hasn't got that many kilometers on it, a bit over 30,000 Ks, and already the texture on the steering wheel is sort of, it has seen definitely better days. Gloss black plastics, very, very soft and scratches really easily. And according to owners, the seats can stain really easily, and it can be a bit of a nightmare to get stains out of the fabric. And then when it comes to what stuff you're going to get, the base model core comes with all of the usual suspects, including a 4-speaker stereo. But interestingly, all 4 speakers are in the front of the car. And then move up to the top of the range Excite, and you're going to get a few more things like 2 extra speakers for the stereo and a few other aesthetic bits and bobs. But the elephant in the room is what the MG3 offers when it comes to safety. Now, to be fair, in terms of passive safety features, this thing doesn't do too badly, but you can forget about any active or autonomous safety features. That's probably why Euro NCAP have only awarded this a 3-star rating. NCAP here in Australia haven't even tested one of these, and they have tested the brand new replacement model, and they've only given it 3 stars as well. Also, as I mentioned before, if you do need all of the specific details on all of this stuff, ReDriven.com, everything's on the cheat sheet. It's time for another Wiper Tech challenge. Will it wipe? And today's victim, a bucket of mud. Now, before we see how these wipe, remember, Wiper Tech wiper blades are super easy to order online. They're an absolute breeze to fit. And if you order them via the link, you're going to get 15% off and free express shipping. Let's see how they go. Okay, go. Jesus. Pretty good. That's pretty decent. And that's really good. So if these things can handle that, surely they're going to handle anything that you can throw at them. Get yourself a set today. And as a massive thank you to my dear friends Andrew and Alex, they're going to be going home with a set of these bad boys for free. And if you want a set for yourself, hit the link down below. Now, while we're on the subject of providing some, let's say, inconsistent quality and behavior, in the backseat, I'm exactly 11 centimeters taller than another MG, Mel Gibson. This is in my driving position, and it's bloody interesting. Loads of foot room, great amount of knee room, but these seats, it's like there's no squidge at all in the seat. This is firmer than some wooden benches I've sat on. Also, because of the angle of the seat, it kind of makes you want to submarine down into the footwell all of the time. Interesting. Great amount of space back here, but the seats are not comfy. And then as far as features and practicality back here, not much. No cup holder at all unless you want to steal this little bin from the front. No door bins except for a little spot to collect life's filth there. That's it. No mat pockets, no armrests, no nothing. Then as far as space in the boot goes, look, it's not too bad. It's not the best in class. It's not the worst in class. It's nowhere near as practical as, say, a Honda Jazz or even a Suzuki Baleno, especially with the seats down, because you're stuck with this massive lip there. But there could be another issue with the boot. See, a few owners have complained that the little strings on the parcel shelf can break or fall through here, but the problem is, when you get replacements, they replace the entire parcel shelf, but this is one of the parts that sometimes isn't in stock. Now, in saying that, I'm sorry, but if you're the sort of person that goes and gets a warranty claim on these little strings not working, I think that says more about you than the car. Okay, now what goes wrong in terms of the driving experience? Well, look, the big complaint here is not only the lack of power, but just with how inconsistent the power is delivered. See, these have a 4-speed automatic, which seems almost ancient in a car from 15 years ago, let alone something as recent as this. And it just feels like MG didn't either have the budget or the time to get the calibrations of the transmission sorted yet. Look, most of the time this thing drives just fine. It should be, let's say, more convenient than having to walk or drag yourself along the ground to get from A to B. But it feels like the engine and the transmission and the steering and the suspension and the brakes they're all speaking like a different dialect of the same language. Look, technically it all works together in, let's say, an acceptable way, but sometimes it can just feel a bit confused and messy. Actually, especially the steering, it can feel really, really heavy at slow speeds and then overly light at high speeds, which is basically the opposite to what you'd actually want. Aside from that, owners have reported quite a few interior rattles. Even in this car, Alex that owns it reported that on really rough roads, there can be rattles that come from the dashboard. But look, overall, this thing drives exactly how you'd expect a car in this sort of budget to drive. If you're expecting anything more from the driving experience, I'm sorry, but that's on you, not the car. But the big concern with the driving experience is just how much longer is it going to provide its average amount of forward propulsion? What mechanically goes wrong with these? I'm afraid I can't tell you because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
Now the engine in these, fun fact, it's the same thing you'll find in a whole bunch of General Motors and Chev products. And in those cars, they do have some reliability issues. Now this is going to upset a few of our North American viewers, but the versions of this engine that are made in China are more reliable than the versions made in the US. Even though they are more reliable, they do still have some issues. One of the most common issues, it's fairly minor, they do chew through ignition coils and spark plugs pretty often. If you feel a misfire, definitely worth starting there. A lot of owners are noticing oil consumption, so between services, absolutely top up that oil. And plenty of reports of split and leaking radiators. Now in some cases, a leaking radiator has gone on to cause an overheating event. These engines do not like being overheated, and often you'll end up with a head gasket problem. Plenty of examples of timing chain issues. Now, no catastrophic timing chain failures. It's more likely going to be a timing chain rattle, and you're going to notice that more on a cold start, and that is even worse on examples that have been poorly serviced. Higher mileage, about 100,000 Ks, we are seeing some oil leaks, predominantly from the timing cover and the valve cover as well. A few reports of low pressure fuel pump failures too. Now, the air conditioning, that can be somewhat problematic. Plenty of failed compressors and leaks from hoses and hard lines too. Overall, the driveline is pretty good. A few complaints that the manual gearboxes are crunchy and just all around terrible to operate. Not a hugely common problem. A few complications with premature clutch wear as well, but that's probably a operator technique issue. And a few reports of the rear wheel bearings failing prematurely too. Plenty of owners also complaining about brake shutter. Now, not so much premature brake wear, but just brake shutter. Often they need the rotors replaced to fix that as well. The good news here, a lot of those problems are actually covered by MG's quite generous, actually, 7-year warranty. So it's not too big of a drama. However, that's if MG can actually get the parts. Now, as Adam alluded to, there are plenty of MGs that have got fairly minor problems sitting around waiting for the parts to arrive because MG can't get the parts. And the same goes for accident damage too. Plenty of panel shops just can't get the parts to repair these things.
Now look, we know that this whole video makes out that every MG3 out there is just some ticking time bomb waiting to go off. But for so many owners, that is simply not the case. Through the research for this video, we found countless stories of owners absolutely adoring their MG3s, and they've had no problems whatsoever. But in saying that, we've also found a whole bunch of owners that had every conceivable issue with these, and they've sworn that they will never buy another MG ever again. But aside from all of the reliability concerns, for us, the reason we wouldn't recommend one of these is because of all the other cars you could buy instead. For $10,000 to $20,000, you have all of the usual suspects like the Toyota Yaris and the Mazda 2, which yes, are smaller and will be older, but they do have superior reputations for build quality and reliability. You could also plant yourself behind the wheel of the Kia and Hyundai siblings, the Rio and the Accent, which yeah, will also be older, but are near identical in size and offer potentially more equipment and a superior driving experience. But the two cars that we would be recommending to shop for instead of one of these is the Honda Jazz and the Suzuki Ignis. Both offer superior build quality and reliability. Both are arguably smarter financial decisions. The Jazz is easily the most practical car in this class, and the Ignis is an absolute blast to drive and offers a great amount of kit for the asking price. But back to the MG3 for a sec. Look, if you're buying more of an appliance than an actual car, or maybe you're buying a second car that you just don't care about and you just want to beat on, well, yeah, I suppose these do the job. Just remember, you really do get what you pay for. Best case scenario, you're going to end up with a decent enough car that often can't match slightly older alternatives in any particular way. Worst case scenario, you end up with a lemon that can inspire you to eradicate the brand from your life once and for all. But either way, the availability of parts and levels of depreciation, they don't inspire much confidence. Actually, you know what? Look, just buy a Jazz or an Ignis instead. Or if you're happy to sacrifice a little bit of size, maybe get one of these. But if you weren't to buy one of these, or one of these, what would you buy instead? Let us know in the comments below, and hopefully these flies can piss off. Now, fun fact for you, The MG3, okay, granted that will be a base model core. I'm going to spit all over the camera. I think it's their MG3.
This year's TFCon,